In the beginning, humans were spherical, with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 faces that looked in opposite directions. And when they moved, they essentially just rolled around like a bowling ball. But they were powerful, and the gods grew frightful of their potential, and subsequently split the humans in 2, but found that each half that they had cut ran back to one another's arms, longing and desiring to be as one with each other, no matter in life or in death. Now, this isn't some Lovecraftian cosmic horror story of old gods tampering with the human psyche or human bodies, but the beginning of Aristophanes' speech within Plato's Symposium, speaking on love and how the god of love, Eros, acted as a guide for humans in connecting with one another. It's an odd example for sure, but its themes of human nature and our drive to be together stand the test of time, as living without favorable human interaction can drive anyone down the darkest path. Riku and Sora are perfect examples of this, as one interacts and grows with each and every new friend that they gain, while the other becomes more desolate and alone the further they travel down their darkened path. And though it might never be said aloud, love is ultimately the light within the Kingdom Hearts universe. It's what brought Beast to Hollow Bastion to find Belle. It's what helped Sora connect to Kairi all those times, and it's what helped Kairi bring Sora back from the darkness. It's love that just might bring Hollow Bastion back from the brink of the abyss. With Traverse Town officially finished, it's high time that we make our way back to Hollow Bastion, and thanks to Sid, we now have a new path that will lead us straight there. The path, however, is a bit treacherous, as there's now a plethora of Heartless and obstacles in our way that we'll need to weave in between to make it back safely. Before too long, we've successfully arrived back at Hollow Bastion and are greeted by a familiar face. Thankfully safe and unharmed, the Beast informs us that Belle is still locked away in the castle alongside the other princesses, which only confirms our suspicions from before that they had remained here to hold back the darkness. At this point, if you're someone who enjoys finding every chest and bit of treasure in a game, it might be good to actually head back down to the waterways to clear out the Trinity spots and grab any chests we might have missed in our first visit. Heading back up the lift and making our way to the entrance hall, we'll find that this area is no longer a safe haven as it once was, and it's probably best that we escape to the pristine confines of the library to lick any wounds we might have accrued. Which is made all the better, as heading up the stairs, we'll get this very heartwarming cutscene.
Oh, Belle!
The reunion between Belle and the Beast is deeply heartfelt, as it is one of the very few times that we actually see two people come together in such a romantic and caring way, a way that reflects the growth of their relationship through their trials and tribulations of their time back at Beast's castle. Of course, the story of that growth, much like the others that we've explored here, varies from their original sources, as each was a reflection of the societies of the time. For Beauty and the Beast, it truly was a tale as old as time, as its inspiration harkens back to one of the greatest love stories within Greek myth. But before we delve into that inspiration, let's explore the tale of Beauty and the Beast to better understand it. Originally written by Villeneuve in 1740, she shares that there once was a merchant who cared for his 12 children. His youngest, Beauty, was the kindest and most beautiful of his children, and was constantly heckled and teased by her siblings for the attention that she received from the local bachelors. However, as the family had been living a good and luxurious life, their luck unfortunately changed for the worse, as the merchant's shipping vessels were reportedly stolen or sunk into the ocean, and their home as well tragically burned to the ground, leaving them with nothing. In the wake of this tragedy, the family moved into a countryside cottage and slowly began to adjust to their new and less fortunate life. In the midst of this, the merchant learned that one of his vessels had surprisingly returned to the port safely, and that he'll need to make it back to the port to earn the money that he had lost. Excited to head out and raise his family's spirits, the merchant asked what gifts his daughters would like. Nearly all of them requested clothes and jewels from his travels, but Beauty was the only one who requested a singular rose. When the merchant made it to the port, however, he soon learned that his colleagues had sold off all of the ship's cargoes already to help pay off his debts. Despondent, the merchant journeyed home then, but was set upon by a fierce snowstorm, which forced the man to seek shelter in a nearby castle. Upon entering inside, he found that the table was set with food and drink, and after waiting a few hours to find his host, he relented and ate and drank his fill. As morning broke, the merchant set off home, but found that the castle had a beautiful rose garden, with some of the roses looking ready to be plucked. Doing so, however, revealed his hidden host, who turned out to be the hideous beast, who screamed and threatened the man's life for being ungracious. Begging for his life, the merchant struck a bargain with the beast to exchange one of his daughters for his life, with the beast stating that if he fails to do so, he will be hunted down mercilessly. Reluctantly accepting the terms, the merchant returned home and informed his family of the deal that he had made with the beast, shocking everyone in their own way. The sons desired to kill the beast, while the daughters agreed that it should be Beauty who goes, to which Beauty agreed to and began to make her way to the castle. Arriving at Beast's castle, fanfare and fireworks exploded in the sky as Beauty was welcomed in with open arms. She was frightened by Beast's appearance at first, as she had never seen a creature like him before, but she soon came to find that he was endearing to her situation, and learned that the beast had no intention of keeping her prisoner. That evening, while the two were having dinner, the beast asked if they could be together forever, which obviously shook the young Beauty, who politely refused, as they didn't know one another. With this, the two departed for the night, whereupon Beauty dreamt of a princely and handsome man who swept her off her feet. Over the next few months, the two get to learn more about one another, as Beauty becomes more accustomed to life in the castle. She becomes friends with the animal servants, spends every waking hour in the library, and even sees any and all plays or operas through the magic window of one of the great halls. This brightened her near every day, but as time went on, Beauty began to feel sad and homesick, as she had been away from her family for nearly a year at this point. To this, the beast reluctantly agreed to allow Beauty to go home, but requested that she return to the castle in 2 months' time, giving her an enchanted ring that, if she wore it, would transport her back home. That next morning, Beauty awoke to find that she had been magically transported back home, and excitedly rushed down to meet everyone that she hadn't seen in almost a year. Her father and brothers were ecstatic to see her, but her sisters, being unkind as they were, wished that she had been torn to shreds instead. Nevertheless, Beauty spent the next 2 months with her family, and unfortunately, her dreams of the beast dying began to fill her every night, and so decided then that she needed to see the beast to see if her dreams were true. And though reluctant to leave her family once again, Beauty raced back to the castle, where she came to find that the beast was really dying, finding him collapsed on the castle grounds. In a mad dash, Beauty soon realized that she truly had fallen for the beast, as she grabbed some water from the nearby spring and splashed it onto him, hoping that would resuscitate him. This thankfully worked, with the beast awakening from his stupor, and the two professing their love for one another as they made their way back to the castle. That night, the beast asked Beauty once again if they might fall asleep together, to which Beauty wholeheartedly agreed to. And though they were not physically next to one another, with him sleeping on the couch and her in her bed, they felt at ease being near one another all the same. When morning broke, Beauty awoke to find that the beast no longer slept on the couch, but that unknown prince from her dreams was there instead, realizing that the beast and the prince were one and the same. Now, you would assume that this would be the end of the story for Beauty and the Beast, as it seemingly wraps everything up in a nice package. And for many iterations after Villeneuve's 1740 telling, like Beaumont's version in 1756, that would be the case. However, Villeneuve actually continues the story, and though it is a little long-winded, it does actually provide some context to the rest of the story. Continuing on, Beauty and her prince awake to find a fairy and the prince's queen mother, who had entered into the pair's bedchambers to express their feelings towards the two now being together. The queen, annoyed that her son had fallen for such a lowly merchant's daughter, declared that the marriage could not take place. The fairy, however, did not feel the same, as she was quick to reveal that Beauty was not just some simple commoner, but was indeed of royal blood, as she was, in fact, the lost daughter of the queen's brother, making her and the prince first cousins. Yeah, times were different back then. In any case, with this, the prince shared with Beauty the reasoning behind his transformation into a hideous beast, stating that as his queen mother was in the middle of a war, she had to give up the young prince to his fairy godmother to help raise him. However, in an attempt to gain power over the kingdom, the fairy godmother attempted to seduce the prince as a teenager and convince him to marry her, to which he quickly refused. This upset the fairy godmother so much that she cursed the boy to become a hideous beast, exclaiming that only a maiden's act of true love would set him free. Distraught by the curse, the prince and the queen weren't sure where to turn next, but by some miracle, they were saved by the good fairy, who helped ensure the prince had a chance at being rid of his curse. This rightfully shocked Beauty, as she never expected that she was a child of royal blood, nor did she expect the reason for her new love's transformation to be so wrought with tragedy. The fairy continued, sharing that Beauty's mother was really the good fairy's sister, and that her father was the king of the nearby Fortunate Island. How unfortunate it would be then that the two's union would be forbidden by the other fairies, subsequently landing Beauty's mother in prison, leaving Beauty all to her lonesome, as the king, her father, was away on a hunting trip during that time. Nevertheless, the tragedy continued as the evil fairy and the fairy godmother cursed the baby Beauty to marry a hideous beast. And as the king returned home, was told that his wife had died while in his absence, allowing the fairy godmother's evil plan to rule the kingdom to slowly come to fruition. Thankfully, the good fairy swooped in once again and saved the day, rescuing Beauty from her tragic life and finding a safe home for her to live and grow in. A home which just so happened to be the merchant's, as he and his wife had just, unfortunately and unknowingly, lost their youngest child to illness. To this, the good fairy assured that Beauty would grow up happy and healthy, and set plans in motion for Beauty and the Beast to finally meet, marry, and break each other's curse, reuniting family and giving love a new and prosperous tomorrow, where everyone lived happily ever after. So, by and large, this story is, strange. Not as strange as some of the others we've explored in our journey so far, but strange nonetheless. As first cousins end up falling in love and marrying one another, all while a fantasy political drama takes place towards the end of the story. Thankfully, much of that strangeness would actually be reduced or outright removed in subsequent versions of the story, making it more streamlined and palatable for all ages. And though many of the later versions would change things here and there, including even the Disney version, each share the rose's motif and importance throughout the story. A motif that expresses the idea that even if something has a prickly exterior, there is still some beauty inside, which unsurprisingly draws inspiration from differing yet similar myths that share this Beauty and the Beast classification, as well as from various characters within them. In looking to the rose's importance, we can actually look to Greek myth, as the rose was first created by the goddess of flowers and daughter of the Titan Oceanus, Chloris, who found a dying woodland nymph and breathed renewed life into her and transformed the nymph into the flowering rose. Whereupon, seeing this, Dionysus, the god of wine, gave the renewed nymph a stunning perfume that would attract any bee or nose to her petals. And seemingly attracted by that sweet scent of the rose, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, observed the rose and thought of her son, Eros, the god of love, deciding then that the name of Rose was to be made by the rearranging of Eros' name. It's partially through this story of the rose that the story of Beauty and the Beast connect to one another, as both of the figures, the nymph and the beast, essentially die, but are given renewed life through the divine magic. An idea of transformation and renewed life that, surprisingly enough, is seen historically as well, as some of the first roses that were cultivated were found in ancient China sometime during the 3rd millennium BCE, where the flowers and their petals would be transformed for multiple purposes, whether that be oil, rose water, or even as confetti in celebrations. The rose has been and always will be a beautiful and transformative symbol of love. As for the story of Beauty and the Beast itself, the theme of love and beauty being hidden behind a veil is, as we mentioned earlier, inspired by a tale of fated love and the lengths that one would go to be with that person that they truly love. First recounted by writer and philosopher Lucius Apelles in 170 CE within his novel The Golden Ass, Apelles spins the tale of Eros and Psyche and their fated love, sharing that Psyche, as the youngest and fairest daughter of the king, was so beautiful that people began to forego their worship of Aphrodite in favor of this young princess. Enraged by this blasphemy, the goddess of beauty ordered that her son Eros was to use his arrows of love to force Psyche to fall in love with a hideous beast. However, when Eros came to her and gazed upon her beauty, he clumsily scratched himself with his own arrow, and instead fell madly in love with the girl. In the passing days, Psyche, who had not yet been married, was deemed by the oracle to be married to a winged serpent for all time, and was subsequently restrained to sit atop the nearby mountain to wait for her new husband to come and sweep her off her feet, much to the dismay of her father. While alone and atop the mountain, dressed in her funerary robes, the personification of the west wind, Zephyrus, appeared and took her high above the clouds and into a calm and quaint meadow that surrounded the most marvelous and ornate home that she'd ever seen. Venturing inside and believing that she might meet the hideous beast and that he might devour her in an instant, she instead heard a calm and soothing voice that rang out to her, telling her to make herself comfortable and to enjoy the food and drink that was provided for her. Suspicious that this person or thing was no mere mortal, she accepted his offerings and felt welcomed in his palace, even though he had forbade her to see his true form, as he desired that his new bride fall for him without the need for his godly appearance. In the coming weeks, Psyche soon became pregnant with their child, and desired that her family visit her so that they could see that she was in fact safe and well taken care of. Shocked by Psyche's new life, her sisters fervently plagued her mind with doubt, scaring her into believing him to actually be a monster, and that it'd be best for him to be killed in his sleep. This idea and doubt continued to pain her for the rest of the day, to which she resolved herself to see her lover's face and kill him if he was indeed a monster as her sisters had assumed. That night, she approached him with candle and knife in hand, but found that it was none other than the god of love and the son of Aphrodite himself, Eros. Shaken and ashamed by her doubt, she mistakenly dropped hot wax onto Eros, waking him from his sleep, to which Eros felt deeply betrayed by Psyche's doubt and flew off without a word to her. By now, I'm sure that you can start to see how the two stories of Beauty and the Beast and Eros and Psyche connect to one another, as we see how the youngest and fairest daughter of a well-to-do family must leave her family to be with a supposed beast, learning that love and true beauty lie hidden within the thorny darkness. Continuing on, the story then follows Psyche's quest to find her godly love once again, during which she meets Aphrodite and commits herself to 3 trials to win her favor, with the first being that she must organize a mixed bag of beans and grains in only a matter of hours, which was easily completed thanks to the help of some kind insects, a motif that would actually go on to help influence the story of Cinderella and the tasks given to her by her own wicked stepmother. In Psyche's second task, she must gather the golden wool from the sheep of Helios, but instead of trying to chase and catch the sheep to shear the wool, she instead found wool that was hanging from nearby brambles and took that instead. And lastly, in her third task, Psyche was required to venture into the underworld and gather the beauty from Persephone, the queen of the dead, place it into a box, and return it to Aphrodite. However, as is common in various Greek stories, curiosity got the better of her, and when she opened the box, a deep and death-like sleep fell upon her. Thankfully, Eros, who had been imprisoned by his mother, escaped and found Psyche on the brink of death and brought her back from her deathly sleep, to which they embraced one another and were officially married to the enjoyment of all the gods, whom had gifted Psyche with their ambrosia, so that the two may love and be with one another for all time. Now, whether you're inspecting the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast, or reading through Villeneuve's original version of the story, the connection of both to the love story of Eros and Psyche is pretty recognizable, with each princess believing that they had fallen for a beast, only for them to find that the person was divinely beautiful, as well as having to go through similar trials to be reunited with their love. We find that these stories are ones of immortal love, for as Eros and Psyche became immortal lovers, so too has the story of Beauty and the Beast attained that same immortality, with the many variations of the story being seen all over the world and throughout the centuries, leading us to this tale that's old as time, appearing here within the library of Hollow Bastion. Now, we don't get to see this connection between the Beast and Belle flourish here in Kingdom Hearts like we do in the second one, I find that this speaks to the story's greater themes of love and connection that's hidden within. That even if you hadn't actually read the story or even seen the animated classic, seeing Beast's devotion to finding Belle in our first visit, and then their reunion during our return visit, we can make this connection that the two care deeply for one another, more so than any of the other characters that we've met thus far. After reuniting Belle and Beast, we learn that the darkness that is currently pouring from the dark keyhole within the Grand Hall has been increasingly difficult to hold back for the princesses, meaning that we'll need to rush in to get that keyhole sealed to help secure the safety of every world. Interestingly, if you actually speak to Belle once again, she'll gift us the Divine Rose Keyblade, which is honestly a really solid Keyblade that I wouldn't blame you for taking all the way to the end of the game. From here, however, this is probably the quickest we'll ever run through this world, as there aren't any really noticeable places that we haven't already explored. That said, as you're running through the castle, please do be careful of the air soldiers, as they've become much more prominent here and can seriously trip you up if you aren't paying attention. But just make your way through the arena platform, use Dumbo Skip, and before you know it, you're back inside the castle chapel that was once tainted by the black magic of Maleficent, but is now home to the remaining Princesses of Light. Here, you don't really need to speak with the princesses, but if we do, we get confirmation that the keyhole that was created in the Grand Hall isn't any normal keyhole, as Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, was apparently drawn into it. And honestly, it's a little eerie to think about, as this force of nature that is the darkness is so overwhelming that these princesses of light struggle to contain the encroaching darkness. Yet, that same darkness and the keyhole that just sits idly by seems so alone and solitary as opposed to the light of the princesses and the worlds that they come from. It's a contrast that shows the significance of light and darkness and the worlds that they interact with. What's more, if we actually walk through the Grand Hall and make our way up the path at the wall's edge, it will actually lead to a lone stasis pod and a chest that contains the Oblivion Keyblade, a Keyblade that stands in direct opposite to Oathkeeper, and is a Keyblade that furthers the conceptualization of light and dark being opposites, yet forces that cannot exist without the other. No matter which religion or cult of worship you look at, the beliefs surrounding the light and the dark have been fairly synonymous, be it the darkness of the unfathomable abyss or the darkness of the underworld. It stands to reason that the pitch black of the universe is primordial. Within Greek myth, Erebus stands as the personification of the darkness that pervades the underworld, portraying the necessary contrast between life and death, who, through copulating with Nyx, the primordial of night, created Chimera, the personification of the day, a creation myth that helped many understand the order that came from chaos, and one that is surprisingly similar to many beliefs around the world. In Egypt, for instance, the light, or as they called it, Ra, came from the watery abyss, Nu or Nun. Within India's Vedas, the light and heat of the universe erupted from the watery nothingness. And the same can even be said for the Abrahamic faiths, as their Genesis states that God existed within the void, and through him created the earth and the light surrounding it. In many of these primordial perspectives of light and of darkness, we surprisingly find very little malice that exists within the darkness, or as its personification that the light outright opposes. Instead, we find that the void or the abyss acts as a neutral force that simply exists and mirrors the light of the day, a dualism that both Taoist thought and even traditional Chinese philosophy are all too familiar with through the conceptualization of the yin and yang. Believed to have originated sometime during the 3rd century BCE, Yin and Yang was a school of thought that helped many understand that the universe existed as a balancing act between all things, and that an imbalance of either could have catastrophic effects, being as well thought to have been crafted from the chaos of the primordial abyss to achieve harmony, or, in other words, an equilibrium within the universe. Whether that harmony is internalized or cosmic, this contradiction between the two is central to the light and dark motifs that we see in Kingdom Hearts. As during our very first moments at the Station of Awakening, it shows us that the closer you get to the light, the greater the darkness becomes. Being a visualized balancing act that expresses that if one or the other becomes the dominant, then the world, or rather worlds, are thrown into imbalance. And it's an idea that is furthered by these two Keyblades, Oblivion and Oathkeeper, through ostensibly different yet mirrored means. As we gained the Oathkeeper through Kairi's friendship and her light, but found her within the darkest and most secluded part of Traverse Town, expressing both yin and yang, or light and darkness, in that small moment. And then with Oblivion, which we gained through a lone chest that sat at the highest point, but the darkest spot of Hollow Bastion, again expressing its own link to yin and yang, as well to its counterpart. Two Keyblades that not only represent the connections to our friends, but also embody the yin and yang perfectly, as both Kairi and Riku exist as that light and dark within Sora's life. However, from our standing atop the walkway with our new Keyblade, we see that there's an immense darkness ahead of us that needs our light so harmony can thrive in this world once again. Stepping down from the platform, I'd highly recommend unlocking this left-hand chest, as it contains puppies 61 through 63, which should be our last grouping needed if we've been collecting them throughout our journey. And doing so, let's make a quick trip back to Traverse Town and see every puppy back together again, where we're given one of the best rewards in the entire game, Eroga, a spell that not only reflects any and all nearby damage, but also is capable of destroying health bars. But with that side quest out of the way, let's finally finish this world and enter into the dark void of Hollow Bastion's keyhole. Stepping inside, it feels like we've just walked into a canvas that's being actively painted. It's an arena that's probably the perfect place to face off against the final boss of this world, as from the shadowy abyss of the keyhole emerges the monstrous Behemoth, a force of pure destruction that it's defeated already. Yeah. So, about this fight, it's disgustingly easy with Eroga. And even then, there's not much to the fight, since Behemoth is a pretty big pushover in this game. However, its original conception paints it in a very different picture that's sure to color you impressed. And I promise that's the last painting joke I'll have here. First appearing in Final Fantasy II as a boss within the Colosseum, the Behemoth has since become a recurring super enemy throughout the many games within the Final Fantasy universe. Design-wise, the Behemoth has received a variety of changes, from the coloration to its horn stylings, but has consistently been portrayed as a chimera of sorts that takes inspiration from animals such as a lion or a bull, or even potentially a dragon at some points, which, given the Behemoth's mythology, makes a lot of sense. In a chimeric sense, this reflects the deeper themes of creatures such as the Manticore of Persian belief, which was said to be a ferocious beast of India with a human face, the body of a lion, and a tail covered in venomous quills, while in Greek belief, Chimera, being potentially born from the king and queen of monsters, Typhon and Echidna, was thought to be one of the most ferocious, as it primarily took on the form of a lion, with her tail being that venomous snake, and its midsection being the head of a goat that breathed fire. These combination of creatures truly expressed the monstrous nature of beasts, which stood in contrast to other chimeras of the time, like that of the Sphinx or the Griffin, creatures that we've explored in previous worlds as divine creatures, as a holy combination of land and air. However, with the Chimera, and similarly the Manticore, they differ in monstrosity due to the venom that they contained within, as this more than likely stems from the perception that many people held of that time of snakes being venomous or dangerous. But looking back towards the Behemoth and using their chimeric creation, we can actually learn a bit more through their biblical connection, as the Behemoth's name derives from the Hebrew word for beast or great beast, Behemoth. We find that within various artworks, such as 1236's Ambrosiana Bible and 1805's watercolor by William Blake, it portrays the Behemoth as both an ox and almost a humanoid hippo-elephant creature, all of which would be aesthetically derived from the unknown of the mythical beast, as its origins are articulated through a singular piece of text that states, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox. Lo now his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He made that him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh with his eyes. His nose pierceth through snares." This exchange between Yahweh and Job showcased the power that the Behemoth was capable of and the strength it has thanks to its creator. Moreover, Behemoth's appearance in this passage is purposefully left ambiguous, save for a mention of a nose ring and a tail, to allow us as readers and listeners to use our imaginations to interpret what this king of beasts might have looked like and the power that it truly was capable of. An imagination that has again depicted the king of beasts in numerous ways, with numerous powers, such as being able to bring down meteors, as we see in Final Fantasy XVI. However, in reality, Behemoth could have stemmed from a number of different creatures that lived across the eastern or southern portions of the Mediterranean, from potentially being a water buffalo to a hippo or even an elephant. Each of these animals could easily fit the bare description given and interpreted as having immense power. That said, this king of beasts wasn't the only one that biblical or likewise texts describe as creatures of notable strength, with Leviathan being found in the Book of Psalms, Isaiah, and Job, as well as Ziz being found almost exclusively within the Book of Psalms, were two creatures that as well represented the power over the waters and skies, respectively, creating a trio of kings of the land, sea, and sky that potentially reflected their chimeric influence, but also the chaotic trinity of the natural world. Unfortunately, however, we don't get to see either of these creatures to the same extent that we do Behemoth in Kingdom Hearts, but their stories within Jewish mythology has ostensibly helped bring this monster to life. Referring to Behemoth again as the king of lands and beasts, as well as Leviathan being the ruler of the oceans, we find that the two appear again within the apocalyptic text of the Book of Enoch, wherein Enoch, chapter 60, verses 7 and 8, describes the two as male and female, respectively, and that at the end of days, each will depart from one another and die. What's interesting about this piece of text is that in the case of Leviathan, this creature and the abyss for which it dwells in is described as being female, which, as we've discussed before, is a very ancient belief that dates all the way back to Mesopotamia, with Tiamat. Being the primordial of the sea, she inspired the themes and understandings of the waters being life-giving and feminine. As for Behemoth, they were said to dwell within the Duodyne, a desert that was just east of the Garden of Eden, which potentially furthers the idea that this king of beasts was created alongside humanity, as well as adding to the conceptualization of the masculine animals being the strong arm of Yahweh's will. Of course, with all that said, looking at Behemoth here in Kingdom Hearts, I honestly can't help but feel a little disappointed that this beast of mythical proportions saw such great design work and implementation throughout the Final Fantasy series, only for it to be essentially a mini boss that doesn't really feel boss-like. Even though it does have some great design work here, it's just a trudging and lackluster boss. Moreover, this is one of the only times we actually see this enemy throughout the Kingdom Hearts series, which only adds to the disappointment of this legendary creature, which, again, leads us to easily defeating the beast and moving forward and finishing out this amazing world. With the Behemoth fight now behind us, Sora and the gang can finally seal the keyhole, and where are you going? Now, listen, I understand that there's important lore information here, but I can't help but say, why? Why couldn't you just seal the keyhole, then walk outside to meet with Leon and the gang, and get that pertinent information at that point? I digress. From this conversation, we learn that the world that we've had to trudge through and dread, and that has caused us so much trouble, but has also provided us with so much, is, or rather was, the home for these Final Fantasy characters. And to top it all off, we find out that when Ansem is in fact defeated, each and every world that was taken by the Heartless will be restored, meaning that Sora and his friends will finally be able to go back home. However, with even the brightest light, there exists a darkness, as even with all of the worlds restored, we won't be able to return to any of them to see everyone again.
We may never meet again, but we'll never forget each other.
No matter where we are, our hearts will bring us together again.
Besides, I couldn't forget you, even if I wanted to.
What's that supposed to mean?
Hurry! Come and close the keyhole!
Sora.
But with everything that we've learned and achieved here, we still have a task to do, and we'll need to do it quickly before any more behemoths reveal themselves through the keyhole. In doing so, this not only brings our journey through the wonder that is Hollow Bastion to an end, but also turns this world into a safe haven for the time being. But as sealing the dark keyhole here in Hollow Bastion may have thwarted the Heartless for now, that doesn't mean that they've stopped their concentration in other worlds. From our first time touching down in Hollow Bastion to our stepping off from it, this world has stood the test of time as the best within Kingdom Hearts. Even though our return visit was simple and clean, there remains a plethora of myths and beliefs to explore here in Kingdom Hearts. From tales of destiny and fate to behemoths, the mythology of this world has continued to excite and wow. Next time, we'll be exploring the superbosses, and you won't want to miss out on it, as there are some very interesting and surprising things that you might learn. So, if you'd like to join me on that adventure, then help support us by subscribing to the channel or by joining our Patreon. There, you can become true gamers like Sarah Smith, Erickson James, Vagar Arnson, Ryan, Carmel, and Steve, who are some of the most amazing people, and I'd love to see you join them. But with that said, I want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.